Nation! You're now listening to the most opinionated, the most exciting, the most son of a Schmidt. You guys actually do something useful here, right? Like, is anything you do even beneficial to someone? Whatever. Now to the show that literally has tens, that's right, tens of followers. The show that brings the Ozone Radio Network to levels of mediocrity that only Michigan fans would know. This is the Sons of Schmidt, starring Mike Meals and Brandon Zimmerman on the Ozone Radio Network.
What is up, Buckeye Nation? Welcome back to the Sons of Schmidt podcast. This is Season 3, Episode 10. This is your host, Mike Meals, from the Hazen Cannon and Ozone Radio Network. Joining me, as always, is my good buddy, Brandon Zimmerman. What is going on, Brandon?
Hello, Michael Dean. I am loving life out here in Colorado. We got our first, legit snowstorm coming through. Front yard's covered. May get a snow delay tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to that. We actually get that type of stuff out here. It's pretty awesome. I feel like I'm back in school. I get 2-hour delays and snow days. It's amazing. I love the government.
I'm really looking forward to it, too. I mean, I'm expecting our snow to hit any time now. It was only 85 degrees today when I left work, so
yeah,
I fully expect the snow to hit tomorrow.
Well, and the crazy part about it is yesterday it was 75 here.
Yeah, so it makes sense. So the possibility is there. Yeah. That's what you're telling me.
Science says y'all are getting snow tomorrow.
Hot damn.
And I even used y'all for you.
I appreciate that. It warmed my newly minted Texas heart. So, dude, before we get going, let's go ahead and go through the recap, right? Obviously, Saturday, Ohio State takes on Nebraska. Ohio State comes into the game 7-1, 4-1 in conference. Nebraska comes in 2-6. They are 1-4 in the Big Ten. They are currently 5th in the Big Ten West. The game's at noon on Fox. Obviously, that's been announced. This is going to be the blackout game. Ohio State's going to wear the special alternate uniforms. It's kind of a big deal here because we're coming off the bye week. We've got to see if Ohio State made the changes that need to be made in order to be competitive for the month of November and potentially continue not only the playoff chances, but just winning the division, winning the conference. Obviously, that's up for debate now. I will go ahead and say this point blank before we even talk about the college football playoffs. If Ohio State wins, they're in. If they don't, if we drop another game this season, the playoffs are out, obviously. But all they have to do is take care of their business on the field. I think you're going to agree with me when we talk about the playoffs and whatnot later. But I just want to go ahead and get that out there. I know it's Tuesday night. The initial rankings were released tonight. We'll touch on that real quick. But as I said, if Ohio State wins, it will play out that Ohio State is in the top 4. So with that being said, the most important question I ask you every Tuesday night for everybody on Thursday when they get to work, what are you drinking? Tell me about what you got in the glass.
Well, I decided to go something new tonight, and I went with Garrison Brothers out of Texas. Keeping with that Texas theme, Garrison Brothers single barrel. Pretty good stuff. I've had it before. A buddy of mine, Billy, a buddy of ours, Billy, shared it with me, Texas guy. So saw it today. I'm like, you know what? That's going to be my show.
There you go. I also went with something new. As I've mentioned on the show and, talk about on Twitter and whatnot, even though I'm in Houston, I technically live in the city of Katy, which is a suburb here in the same county. But the next little town west of here is a little itty-bitty town called Brookshire, Texas. And Brookshire has a distillery in it. This stuff is called Shire Shine. It's actually their white whiskey. It's kind of like a moonshine-ish kind of base thing. But I figured I'd try it. It's brewed or it's distilled. I looked on the map. It is 9 miles from my front door to their distillery. So So far, I'm enjoying it, and if it's good, that's going to work out perfect, because then I'd have a good whiskey that's made 10 miles from the house and a beer that's made 2 miles from the house. So
sounds like you need to go there for a tour.
It's kind of what I'm thinking. I've hit every other one that's up. So
now, does it have the bite or like the burnness of a moonshine, or is it still pretty smooth?
No, it actually it tastes a lot like the Arizona distillery, the one that we went to when we went out there in Phoenix. They're they made a bourbon, but before they barrel aged it, they just bottled some of it up, and that's what they were selling as moonshine. That's what this tastes like. It has a bourbon flavor to it, but not the bourbon bite, and it doesn't have the nastiness that some moonshines would have. I mean, this is 45% alcohol, so it's 90 proof, but it seems to be doing the job. It's pretty good on ice.
Yeah, when you come out this weekend, you should bring that.
Yeah, I'll throw some in the bag. So, all right, man. So the first thing I want to touch on before we get going, as I mentioned, we got the college football playoff rankings were released. So before we go, got to ask you, this is the week of Halloween. Obviously, Ohio State's wearing the blackout uniforms. Everybody's getting all dressed up, and trick-or-treat's supposed to be this week. So next important question, what is your best and most underrated Halloween trick-or-treat candies?
Oh, well, best, I mean, without a doubt, has to be Reese Cups.
Yeah, buddy.
Those Reese Cups, especially when it's like the shape like the pumpkins or like the specialty for the seasons. Throw those in the refrigerator, the freezer. Shoot.
Yeah, that's the good stuff. Now, what's your most underrated?
Most underrated?
Yeah.
Me personally, like, I know they're pretty basic, and it kind of makes me like pretty basic. But I love Smarties.
Okay.
I think Smarties are so darn good, and nobody ever likes them. And like, I will sit there and I will eat the shit out of some Smarties.
I got you. Yeah, for me it's the Reese Cups, and then it's a tie between the not the Smarties. What's the other one? The I can't even think of them now. Like Shock Tarts, I think it is.
Okay.
And then the little Hershey Dots, the little fruity, whatever.
Those things stick in my teeth, man.
Yeah, I know, but every once in a while they get, kind of riled up. So, I don't know.
Like the thing that stinks with those dots is, like, if you get a stale pack.
Oh, they're ruined.
They are, like, you're going to be picking that out of your teeth for the next 4 days.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It doesn't matter how many times you floss or you brush your teeth. Like, you're going to be sitting there at work, and you're that dude with the finger in your mouth trying to get that freaking dot out.
Well, that's what I'm going for, so. All right, man. So, as I mentioned, college football playoff rankings came out. They were just released a couple hours ago. Obvious choice number 1 is Alabama. Number 2 is Clemson. Kind of a surprise with LSU being number 3, but they do have a better resume over undefeated number 4 Notre Dame. Michigan's 5. I don't have a problem with Michigan there. I mean, you take away that first quarter against Notre Dame, they've played great football this year. Georgia, Oklahoma, Wazoo, Kentucky round out the next 4, and then our Buckeyes come in at 10. I know at the beginning of the season, there's no way that Kentucky or Wazoo or anybody would have been up there ahead of Ohio State, but I personally don't really have an issue with it the way the Buckeyes have played the last couple weeks. And as I mentioned, if they win, they're in. So I'm not too concerned. But what's your take on the playoffs in week 1?
Well, frankly, Mike, I don't give a shit.
There you go.
It is so early that, like, I don't care where they're at. Like, and we've said it before, and we'll talk about it numerous times between now and then. If Ohio State wins their freaking games, they are in. Who cares who's in front of them? Kentucky's going to lose this weekend. There's nobody out there that thinks Kentucky's a better team than Ohio State. Washington State, I don't think anyone thinks they're a better team than Ohio State. I'd be worried a little bit about Ohio State facing them just because from what we know, Ohio State has never seen a forward pass before on defense, and they don't know what to do with it. So, and Washington State's going to be out there, Dwayne Haskins, that shit, so, like, throwing it 70 times. So, yeah, I mean, like, I just don't care, man. Like, I don't care where they are. I was glad to see them at 10. I think 10's a good spot for how they've been playing the last couple weeks. And I've talked to quite a few people this week at work and, just around, and I don't care where they're at right now. I don't care if they win on Saturday. I'm withholding all my judgments for Ohio State to see what they do on Saturday and how they look. Did they make changes on defense? Did they make changes to the run game? Those type of things. Before I really start to care about where they're ranked or how they're going to do against Michigan State or Michigan or any of that stuff. So, yay, college football playoffs.
Yeah, it's plain and simple. They have to win. They have to have made the adjustments. And we're going to talk about that here in the first segment before we preview Nebraska. But, yeah, I'm not betting anything on it until after this weekend just to see what Ohio State can do. And quite frankly, if Ohio State doesn't come out against Nebraska and make the changes they need to, the playoffs are out. So you might as well just pass that along. And then it just comes down to is can they even win their division? And that's what they have to concentrate on. So I'm fine with it. That gives them a little bit of a chip to build on and whatnot. So absolutely a good call. On that note, man, let's go ahead and take our first break. When we come back, we'll answer couple questions that were asked that we tabled until this week. We'll talk a little bit about some depth chart news, and then we'll get into just exactly what Ohio State actually has to do to fix it. So we'll be right back.
This is the Ozone Radio Network, a Hayes and Cannon production. For the latest episodes of all your favorite podcasts covering Buckeye Nation, look for the Ozone Radio Network on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and Speaker. You can also find the latest episodes by clicking on the Hayes and Cannon tab at theozone.net. Once again, here are the Sons of Schmidt.
All right, dude, so let's go ahead and start in on this, man. We know there are enough things that need to happen for Ohio State to be competitive. We know that they have to fix some things, and Ohio State's going to have to respond based off of not just the inefficiencies that they've had so far this season, but obviously some player personnel issues, some injuries and whatnot that have come up. Obviously, we mentioned it last week that Austin Mack is going to be out. They announced today, the depth chart came out, that Ben Victor is going to take his starting spot. One of the things I noticed, and we talked about right before the show, that it was last week or 2 weeks ago for Purdue, and you saw it again this week, that Arnett and Okudah are listed as the or starters. We're back to that whole thing. But what's your big take on, the depth chart news and any of your takeaways from any of the staff interviews, the player interviews, any other news that's came out of Ohio State since we last saw them take the field?
Well, I mean, as far as the depth chart goes, I really don't put too much stock into whatever the depth chart says nowadays. It seems like it's the same thing every week, and they make changes like when they have to make changes. Like when Damon Arnett was hurt and he was probably going to miss that game against Purdue, like they threw an or out there for Jeffrey Okudah. Now that Austin Mack's out, they threw Ben Victor into that starter role. I'm actually really curious to see how that wide receiver rotation shakes out now. Austin Mack was just such a steady presence, and I mean stats wise, like you look at it, and he was only like their third leading receiver, but he was such a consistent presence for Dwayne Haskins, and we kind of talked about this last week. I mean, they are roommates. You could tell Dwayne Haskins felt comfortable with him in pressure situations. So who's going to be that person that steps up now? I mean, I know Ben Victor's listed as the starter out there. I would like to see. I know I've been calling for it. You've been calling for it. I mean, like, it would be awesome to see.
KJ Hill.
Yeah, it would be awesome to see KJ Hill outside there. I mean, to see us starting three of, Paris Campbell, KJ Hill, and Terry McLaurin, I think would be pretty darn good. And I've actually came around on Terry McLaurin. I should, get some credit here. I was very anti-Terry for a while.
Well, we said it at the end of last year on the wrap-up shows and stuff. He should not be on the field, and he's made a believer out of me too, so absolutely.
Yeah, I think he plays a very good role, and I mean, his blocking and his receiving ability fits in perfectly with what KJ Hill, Paris Campbell, Austin Mack, and Ben Victor do. Like, he should never be like a number one or like their primary target, but he is a heck of a number 2, 3 type of guy that can take advantage of defenses that are focusing on other people. So I think Terry McLaurin, I'll be the first to admit I was totally wrong with him. So I'm all about him playing and being a starter for Ohio State. He looks so much better than he did last year. You throw in Johnny Dixon, who actually has kind of been kind of quiet this year and a little, I don't know, I guess you could call it a disappointment compared to what he did last year. But I just think the offense is different than what it was last year. You know, like he kind of made his mark last year with the JT Barrett little like 5 yards, go across the middle, turn around, and JT Barrett's going to hit you and then just go off and, you know, run. And they just really don't run that type of offense this year. So I'm going to be interested to see how the wide receiver room plays out. I think Ben Victor has the potential. We've talked about it for years, how Ben Victor has the potential to take over games. He showed it with like Penn State and stuff. So maybe, you know, him being the number one, the guy, maybe this is what it takes, and we see a whole new Ben Victor moving forward, which would be awesome. The other thing, the depth chart didn't show any changes there, but I'm like really anxious to see if there's any changes on the offensive line when we come out on Saturday. I know we've talked about it. I think we're both kind of on the Matt Burrell back, or not Matt Burrell, Michael Pridgeon. Man, like I went back to last year. Michael Pridgeon back to guard boat. Oh my God, man.
What are you doing? What are you talking about, homie?
Michael Jordan.
There you go.
We spent way too much time doing the commercial that I'm already fried. All right, so we're both on the Michael Jordan back to guard boat, you know, trying to get him back there and seeing who, like whether it's Josh Myers or Brady Taylor, who's finally getting healthy back there at center. I think we both want to see Brandon Bowen back at the other guard spot. And then I know you talked about it quite a bit with the Sloopcast folks. I know Isaiah Prince talked about it today. You know, like a big thing that we noticed with that offensive line this year is they're almost like gentle giants, you know, and they need that, you know, pissed off aggression, and that's what Isaiah Prince called it. He called it physical attitude is what they needed. I know you talked about it quite a bit with the Sloopcast folks.
Yeah, I mean, it's so for those of you that haven't noticed it yet, obviously the Monday episode of the Sloopcast, I was on with Jared, and you know, we were talking about this same topic a little bit here of you know, how do you fix Ohio State? What needs to happen? And like I told him, and I'll tell you guys again, Ohio State's offensive line needs to have that aggression. They need to have that controlled mentality that they are going to destroy the guy lined up across from them. And right now they've been lacking that. But I do believe that if you get Jordan back at guard, or you get somebody to take over at guard and leave him at center, either one could work, but they've got to develop that hatred and that controlled aggression. Absolutely. You're exactly right.
So do you think that Malcolm Pridgeon and Demetrius Knox need to be moved out? Do you think like Michael Jordan and Brandon Bowen would be good to fill in for both of them? I'm just trying to figure out what's going on with Knox this year. Like, I felt like last year he was so solid, and this year it seems like it's more of a liability.
I don't know that that's necessarily the case, mainly because I don't know if there's enough talent behind Jordan at center to justify moving him out. So you have to look at Michael Jordan is obviously, of those three spots, is in my mind the one that's the most solid, no matter where you put him, either guard or the center spot. I think Brandon Bowen is obviously going to be the better guard to come in. But the question is Jordan at guard with somebody like a Taylor or Myers at center as good as Bowen, Jordan, Knox? And I don't know. I couldn't tell you without seeing the other guys because I really hadn't seen Meyer or Taylor play a whole lot. So I don't know how good they are at center.
So the big knock with Myers, what I've heard is that he's just not that good at pass blocking, but he's a very good rush blocker. At this point with Ohio State, would you rather a center that's better at pass blocking or at rush blocking? Just you as a offensive lineman, what do you think?
For me, I'm the oddball. When I played inside, like when I played center, I would rather pass block. That was just what I preferred to do. When I played guard or tackle, I'd rather run block. So that was just my personal preference. Now, out of this offensive line, I think they need the better run block attack personally, because you have to establish that, because the next 4 weeks are the 4 weeks that you get both the better teams, and you typically have more of a weather impact. You know, you may not get the rainstorm like you had the first 2 weeks of the season, but you're going to get the cold. You may get some snow flurries. You're going to have wind. So you're not going to be able to throw the ball 70 times again. So I think you have to establish it as a rushing attack personally.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm curious to see how they do this Saturday and if there's any changes to the offensive line at all.
Yeah, so we'll get into this here. Before we do, I have to ask you, we had a couple questions here that were tabled, and I want to touch on these with you real quick. The first one comes from @Buckeye Radio, our buddy Joe Dexter. His question is more related to Purdue, but it kind of went over the last couple weeks here. And the question is why was the OSU scheme on offense and defense so predictable, and or was it Purdue and Minnesota, etc., at just executing at a better rate? What do you think on that?
I think Ohio State, it's hard to say it because, like, the coaching staff's working, but I feel like Ohio State got a little lazy over these past couple weeks, and they were kind of content coasting through. And I almost get the feeling like Ohio State, in their mind, was just trying to coast by to that bye week where they could get everyone healthy. They played 7 or 8 games straight, and they just wanted to kind of get there. They knew their players were tired, and I think Minnesota and Purdue both have darn good coaches with PJ Fleck and Jeff Brom, and you're not used to saying that about those two teams. And I think they were able to take advantage of maybe a tired staff, a tired team. And that's not even factor in all the other bullshit that happened with Ohio State during the offseason. I mean, they were just mentally done. And so I think they were trying to get to that bye week, and they just didn't quite make it there in time. And so I think it was a very lazy game plan offensively and defensively. Whether that is the norm and what we're going to expect for the rest of the year, we don't know until we see the game on Saturday. But I think PJ Fleck and Jeff Brom did a great job of taking advantage of the problems that everyone knew that Ohio State had, and knew that they probably weren't going to fix them until they got to the bye week, because it would just be too hard. And you had two good coaches and two great game plans that took advantage of Ohio State. I don't know. Where do you sit on that one?
I think it's 100% that Ohio State was just becoming predictable. I mean, Purdue and Minnesota both played well. Indiana played well, but yeah, it was a fact that they just became predictable, and it wasn't an issue anymore. I mean, everybody and their brother knew that they were going to throw the ball to Rondell Moore on a slant. Everybody knew that the linebackers weren't going to play zone even when they dropped back. Everybody knew that it wasn't going to be a handoff on the read option. So I just think they got predictable. Next question is from our buddy Ben @Buckeye BVO. I believe he copied this from Andrew. With all the success in recruiting, we know the talent is there. Is it a lack of development, or are these kids being overrated by recruiting services, Or is it potentially from the lack of reps with the number of upperclassmen that we've had the last few years, and these guys just haven't seen the field?
I think it's funny that a recruiting guy is asking us questions about recruiting.
I know, right? It's ironic, huh?
No, I mean, gosh, I think it's, and we've kind of talked about it the past couple weeks, and I think part of it may be a little, players were overrated coming in. But I think a big part of it, like we've talked about, is that the coaching staff has not put some of these younger players in positions to succeed. When you see guys like Isaiah Pryor, and I'm kind of getting tired of railing on him just because it's getting old, even for me, so I'm sure it's getting old for people to hear me constantly talking negatively about him. But when you stick Isaiah Pryor out there, who all season has had problems tackling, has had problems in coverage, has had problems in, taking the correct routes to a ball carrier, and sticking him one-on-one with Rondale Moore, like you're just setting him up for failure. And so as a coaching staff, as a leader, as, just you've got to put your players in position to succeed. And I feel like Isaiah Pryor has not been put into a position to succeed. I feel like Tuff Borland has not been put into a position to succeed. I feel like Baron Brown has not been put into a position to succeed. I feel like Pete Werner has not been put into a position to succeed. I feel like Sean Wade being moved around so much has not been put into a position to succeed. So you got all these guys that are kind of in that back half that are being put in very shitty situations that I think kind of contribute to it quite a bit.
Yeah, I think the linebackers, which is a whole different situation, that is specifically on scheme and development from the coach. But I believe just in general, it's, as you said, it's been a lack of successful planning and not getting the guy set up. So I agree with you there. Last question that we have for you I'm going to bring up is from my friend Janelle. And her question has all caps, and it says, "What the bleep is wrong with the running game?" By the way, the bleep was something that, it didn't say bleep, so I'll let your imagination run wild. But what is wrong with the running game, Brandon? Fix it for me, because this ties into our topic that we led into last week, and we told you guys that we were going to talk about this week. And how do you fix the running game? How do you fix Ohio State in general?
You know what? I mean, honestly, this one, I'm going to kick back to you because I know you can explain this quite a bit better, and you have before, but it all comes down to that read option, right? Where the defensive end's being left pretty much unblocked, and he's got the decision to either go after Dwayne Haskins or after Mike Weber or J.K. Dobbins. And spoiler alert, he's picking the running backs every time, which nobody blames those people. So, I'm going to kick it back to you on this one.
Well, I've said it before, and I've explained it on Twitter. I've explained it in articles. I've explained it on here. A read option is no different than any other option play. There is a guy that you're going to read to see what he does, and you're supposed to make a play off that. So the ball gets snapped to the quarterback. Quarterback has to look at that guy. He takes a second, makes his decision, and then has to either hand the ball off or tuck it and run. But every time, everybody knows that Haskins is not going to run. So now you have the delay there. You have the delay on the handoff, and the guy is still crashing down on the running back. So now you've set your running back up to fail. And quite frankly, as I've mentioned before, you need to just get rid of the read option and just do a straight handoff, ball snap, immediately turn, hand it off, and let him get going to try to beat that lineman, which, oh, by the way, when you do that, you game plan to actually block that lineman instead of letting him be the option guy. So now you have a better chance of success for your running back. And I've said this too, and this is something else, and we've talked about this. You and I have been saying this since Indiana of last year. Jared and I talked about it on the Sloopcast when I talked to him this week. If you insist on running an option, put Weber and J.K. Dobbins in the backfield together. I mean, that's how they're successful at the Air Force. It's how they're successful at Georgia Tech. They have multiple running backs, and you read, instead of Haskins being the one that's going to carry the ball, you read it and it's all right, am I giving it to the guy going up the middle or the guy going out to the side, right? Run it like a real option. If you absolutely refuse to put Weber and Dobbins in the backfield and you still want to do some kind of an option offense, Tate Martell needs to see the field. He doesn't need to play the whole game. I don't know that, Jared and I had that discussion. He says that he wouldn't bring Martell in the red zone. I would bring him in sometimes on a short yardage, no matter where you're at, and let Martell be the quarterback that's going to run that, because at least then you have to plan for him potentially running. You're not going to bench Haskins for Martell for the whole game, but bring him in on a few of these short yardage situations and go with it. So, yeah, that's my fix for the running game, and along with the offensive line stuff that we've talked about. But now I know, as I mentioned, though, you have obviously the Haskins Martell thing. You have the issues at the offensive line, which we talked about. We've mentioned it all season about Wade possibly moving to safety, and he should be set up back there. What other changes do you still think need to happen? And here's the real kicker for you. You ready? How likely is it that we see any of these changes this week?
I think I don't know. It's hard because I want to say that the coaching staff is going to make changes. You listen to Greg Schiano, and he's like, everything's good to go. Changes don't need to happen. But then you listen to Tough Borland tonight, and he says that you'll see stuff on defense that Ohio State hasn't done before. I presume that means tackling or covering wide receivers coming across the middle. I don't know.
Taking a good angle.
Yeah, taking a good angle. Or is it brand new stuff? I don't know. So I still am on the boat. Like I said, was it 2 weeks ago? I want the defensive line shuffled a little bit. Once again, I'm all about putting players in positions to succeed. I still feel like Chase Young and Draymond Jones as the defensive ends, and having Davon Hamilton and Robert Landers be the defensive tackles is the best way to go. That's a good combination of pass rushing plus, body pluggers that they need for the Buckeyes to open up the linebackers just a little bit. Because, we've all mentioned it before. The linebackers have been struggling so bad to get off of any blocks. So what do we need to do? We need to take up bodies so that there aren't other guys on those linebackers, and let Pete Werner and Malik Harrison and Baron Browning and Tuff Borland run free and make plays, which I think is where they are going to excel the most, is when they can actually use their speed and their athleticism to make plays. Right now they aren't. So I'm really curious to see how the front seven together play out. I don't think we will ever see that change. I think Draymond Jones is going to be the defensive tackle. Meyer said that Robert Landers is finally healthy for the first time in a week, so we'll see Robert Landers at defensive tackle. We'll still see Jonathan Cooper outside. We'll still see Tyreek Smith kind of getting his playing time more and more as we move forward. So outside of that, I am really curious to see how safeties work out this week. Yep. I want Shaun Wade. They've had 2 weeks. Shaun Wade's been playing safety in practice since that Oregon State game. Damon Arnett is completely healthy at this point. Have Shaun Wade be that safety next to Jordan Fuller. Have Arnett, Okuda, and Sheffield be your 3 corners. Go from there. They've gone with a 3-man rotation at cornerback for so many years. They don't need that 4th person. Stick Shaun Wade back there. But, until we actually see it, I'm just not going to buy it that it's going to be something that's going to be a full-time thing.
Yeah, I'm not so convinced that we're going to see all the changes that we would like to see, but at the end of the day, I have to bank on Ohio State at least making some changes. But like I said, if they can't do it against Nebraska, right off the playoffs, because we can't win the division at that point. So
question for you.
Yeah.
We have all these changes that we want. At a bare minimum, what is the one thing you want to see Ohio State defense do differently this week?
The one change I think that would be the easiest to implement and also give you the best bang for your buck. So the lowest hanging fruit that's going to give you the most success is set your goddamn linebackers up to succeed. Get them off the line of scrimmage. Stop putting your weak side linebacker out on the slot man. Let them start in a traditional 7-man in the box scheme and let your linebackers be damn linebackers. Because our defensive backfield is good enough with Sheffield and Okuda and these guys back there that they can help stop a passing game. Your linebackers are not going out to cover a slot guy. Stop doing it. Let them line up and actually, take out Adrian Martinez this week and slow down their 2 running backs because Nebraska has a good rushing attack and you have to move them in. So that's the one easy change that has to happen in my mind.
That was going to be mine too. Is like at a bare minimum, just don't line the linebackers up on the line. If you do nothing else, just do that.
Yep.
And let me see how it plays out for a week.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's it.
All right, man. So I know we've kind of talked about it. We've mentioned it all season. It seems to come up every week. We talk about things that need to be done to fix Ohio State. But before we take a break, is there anything else that you want to put out there, or are you good, man?
No, I think we're good.
All right.
We're fiddle fucking our way through this one.
Well, I got some good news because our sponsor this week is quite possibly my favorite one that we've had, and this is the best commercial I've ever heard. So we're going to take a quick pause. When we come back after we hear from Osborne Corn Insurance out of Lincoln, we'll get into looking at the Nebraska game. So give me about a minute, and we'll take a break.
Corn, 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 corny, corn, 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 corny, corn, corn.
Ooh, frost!
This year in Nebraska, the frost has been a little later to arrive than expected, and plenty of fans of the corn have spent countless weeks waiting for the frost to make an impact, which instead of taking over our lives, we've just lost precious time.
But thanks to our friends up north in Minnesota and a little help from our Farmer Channeling System, or FCS, the frost has finally arrived. Sure, it may not be the national championship system the frost was in before, but you can finally see the frost in the corn.
Here at Osborne Corn Insurance, we will ensure that your corn is as frosty as a frozen runza.
All right, Brandon. So, as I mentioned, Nebraska comes in on a 2-game winning streak. They knocked off Minnesota for their first win of the season. 2 weeks ago, last week, they beat up on Bethune-Cookman. They won 45-9. Obviously, Nebraska's coaching staff is in the process of basically tearing that roster down and starting all over again, implementing Scott Frost's system, and trying to turn everything around because Mike Riley had left the cupboards extremely bare, and Nebraska was very weak. I mean, by their own admission, they weren't tough. They weren't playing good football. Obviously, it was not a good 3-year experiment with Mike Riley there. Offensively, Nebraska is averaging 250 yards a game passing. They also average 220 yards a game rushing. They're averaging basically 3.5, almost 4 touchdowns a game, considering the fact that they lost their first 6. On defense, they're able to hold opposing offenses to 272 yards a game. They're giving up 166 yards rushing. Obviously, their defense is not as tough as they should be. It's not the same black shirt defense that we're used to when you think of Nebraska. Adrian Martinez, their quarterback, he's completing 66% of his passes this year. He's got 1,656 yards passing. He's thrown 11 touchdowns to only 6 picks, but he's also carried the ball 83 times. He's just over 400 yards rushing, averages just shy of 5 yards a carry. He's picked up 4 touchdowns on the ground. Nebraska's offense obviously runs through Martinez. Their running game, Ezigbo has 710 yards. Maurice Washington has 344 yards. Both of them average more than 5 yards a carry. Between the two of them, they have 11 rushing touchdowns. A name that's familiar to Ohio State fans, J.D. Spielman. He's caught 56 balls this year for 686 yards. And Stanley Morgan Jr., their other wide receiver, who's one of the best wide receivers in the Big Ten. He's had 44 catches for 638 yards. Between the two of them, they've had 12 touchdowns alone. That being said, obviously, Nebraska's offense does not match up with what their record shows. They've been able to move the ball. They've got some talent there, but, it's not quite the same Nebraska offense that we're used to either. But what does Ohio State do, and how do they match up with this offense, and do we have a shot to slow them down?
This offense has actually been worrying me these past couple of weeks just because there's so much unknown with Ohio State's defense that this is the type of offense that could really cause some problems for them. Even just if you look at quarterback, Ohio State's traditionally had struggles against quarterbacks who were good at throwing the ball and running the ball. You threw all those stats out there for Adrian Martinez. You look at what he did against Wisconsin, who I think is a better defense probably than Ohio State is right now. Against Wisconsin, he threw for 384 yards. He ran for 57 yards and had 3 touchdowns. So he has shown it against teams that have a pulse. It's not just like he's loading up stats on some Bethune-Cookmans, he is putting them up against good teams. Against Minnesota, he ran for 125 yards. So he is someone that worries me just because of what we know about Ohio State's defense over these past couple weeks. And we don't know if they're going to make those changes that are required. So Adrian Martinez is somebody that could go into Columbus on Saturday and really just stomp a hole in their ass and, put up 300 yards of passing offense, 100 yards of rushing offense. And that's not even counting what Ozigbo does too. So this offense is going to be a challenge. And I know people are going to look at it like, oh, this team's 2-6. Ohio State should win, and Ohio State should win. And I'm not even concerned about Ohio State winning. I think they will. Nebraska's defense is so bad that I think Ohio State's offense will be able to put up a lot of points. But like I said earlier, I'm more concerned with how the schemes have changed, how the personnel have changed, how the defense looks, how the offense has kind of changed as far as a run game against Nebraska. And really, no matter what the score is, I don't care. I just want to see those changes in the personnel groupings and the schemes.
Okay. Well, when you look on the defensive side of the ball, Nebraska's led by their 3 linebackers. Muhammad Berry leads the team with 64 tackles. He's had 6.5 tackles for loss. Dedrick Young has 43 tackles and 3 tackles for loss. And Luke Gifford has 43 tackles, 9.5 tackles for loss, but he also has 4.5 sacks. So obviously they use their linebackers like we wish we did, but the rest of their defense, I don't think they're as solid as a lot of the defenses Ohio State has faced this year, and they've clearly not faced a passer like Dwayne Haskins. But what about when Ohio State has the ball? How do they match up with the Cornhuskers defense?
Well, like I mentioned, this defense is probably one of the worst they've faced this year. It's maybe Oregon State's worse. I don't know. Rutgers is probably even better. You look at it, they are 102nd in total defense, 101st in scoring defense. Some of their games this year, they gave up 56 to Michigan. They gave up 42 points to Purdue, 41 points to Wisconsin. Bethune-Cookman last week is the only team that they've held under 24 points this year. 71st in rush defense. Michigan ran for 285 on them. Wisconsin ran for 370 yards against them. They're 111th in passing defense. Colorado threw for 351 yards against them. Purdue threw for 328 yards. Northwestern threw for 455 yards against Nebraska. And Minnesota threw for 349 yards. So This defense has a lot of holes, and yeah, the linebackers' stats look like they're pretty crazy, but like I feel like they are literally the only people on the field that are making plays, so it kind of like adds up. So, like I said, like I think Dwayne Haskins is going to be able to put up some points. It's weird. I really feel confident this week that Ohio State's going to rush the ball for a lot of yards. Like, I don't know why. I just have this feeling, and I haven't had this feeling for a few weeks. I think J.K. Dobbins, I think Mike Weber are going to run for a lot of yards against this defense. So I hope I'm right, and I hope we see some steps in the right direction.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that about the linebackers, because when I was going through and looking through their depth chart and through their stats and everything, it just so happened that these three were at the top of the list, like, for tackles and tackles for loss. I think there's a defensive back or a safety that's somewhere in the top 4 for their tackles for the team, but everyone else it's a drastic fall off. So yeah, their linebackers are the only people that are making plays for them, and I believe that you're definitely onto something. I really see Ohio State wanting to concentrate on running the ball, not just because they need to establish the run game for the next 4 games, but also because with them having the 2 weeks off here, this is the chance to really come out and see what they can do. Earlier this season, we talked a few times, like, I think this is the game Ohio State tries to run the ball. I think this is the game. And you're on to something for sure here. This isn't a I think or I hope they will. It just kind of feels like it's going to be. Like it's a different type of feeling for sure. So, yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think this is going to be a big Ohio State running game this week. So,
and I will say, if they don't run for a lot of yards this weekend, I don't think they will for the rest of the year, because the competition gets a lot worse, and that confidence level is going to be so low.
Oh,
that,
there's
this
no
is their
choice.
chance.
So with that being said, I kind of changed it up a little bit this week on the over-under when we start looking at our keys for the game, because I had that same feeling looking at this is going to be a rush-first offense. And there's going to be some changes made both in personnel and in scheme. So first thing on the over-under, we know Dwayne Haskins can get the yards or the touchdowns that he needs. There's no doubt in our mind. But my question for you for number one on the quarterbacks, Tate Martell, is he responsible for at least one touchdown this week, whether it be passing, running, on a read option, somebody else? Is he on the field for an Ohio State touchdown this week? Not in garbage time, by the way.
Oh, so there's no, I mean, honestly, even with that caveat, I feel like there will be. I think they're going to throw him in there, because you got to start thinking long term too. You got to start thinking about Michigan State and Michigan, and I think they will put Tate in at some point that's not purely garbage time. And I think he will probably get a touchdown, because they got to start making Michigan think about this. They got to start making Michigan State think about this. So I think he will get at least one touchdown.
I do too. I absolutely do. The next one is with the running game, and this is where I tell you that I felt like this was going to happen, like we mentioned just a little bit ago. Rushing attempts this game. Does Ohio State run the ball as a team 30 or more times?
So this is as a team, so it counts like quarterbacks too, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, I'm going to go over on this one, and I might even lean towards it'll be over with J.K. Dobbins and Mike Weber just by themselves.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I don't think you're going to have the Dwayne Haskins carries, except for maybe an occasional scramble. But with Dobbins, Weber, and again, Tate Martell, I think you easily clear the 30, just those three. Not counting any sacks or anything that get thrown in there in the end. That's me personally. The next one, because of the concentration on the rushing game, does Ohio State have a 100-yard receiver in this game?
I think they do, and I am going to actually even say who it will be. I think Terry McLaurin will be over 100 yards this week. And I wouldn't be surprised if Paris Campbell was too.
Okay, I'll take that. I actually think it's going to be under, just because with Mac being out, I think they're really going to try to find a way to spread the ball out as much as possible. I wouldn't be surprised if there's 8 or 9 guys in that 60 to 90 yard range, but I don't know if we have a 100-yard receiver. On the defensive side of the ball, linebackers, the starting linebackers, do they get 9 tackles or not?
Oh, man, I think I'll go over on this one.
That's not a bad pick. I think you're definitely onto something here. So I would like to see the linebackers make a play. I'd like to see the changes I mentioned already. So 9 tackles is definitely well within the realm of possibility, and I could see the linebackers really being an integral part of the defensive game plan this year. So I'm going to take the over there also. Last one I got for you, the defensive backs. We know they don't turn around, they don't look for the ball. But with Adrian Martinez, who likes to throw, do the defensive backs have 3 passes broken up?
God, this hurts me. Man, I'm going to go the under. I don't have faith in that.
I think this is the week that we get the defensive back to make a game and a name for himself. So I'm actually going to take the over. I'm not going to put out there who it is, but somebody is going to want to make a game this year where it's, hey, this is the game player X took over. And I see a defensive back doing that this week. So, all right, man, that's our keys to the game here. Before we stop and take our Son of a Schmidt break, is there anything else you want to put out there on Nebraska?
No, I just hope they stop J.D. Spielman. That's my big fear. I mean, like, Stanton Morgan's a beast, but, like, J.D. Spielman, if y'all remember, he's the guy that went for 11 catches, 200 yards last year against the Buckeyes and a touchdown, kind of in that Rondale Moore light role. So, J.D. Spielman. Isn't he the nephew of Chris, too?
Yeah. I was just going to say, so he's going to have a little bit of tie in there, but all right, man, let's take a quick break. I know you've got your Son of a Schmidt lined up, and we'll get those out of the way, and then we'll get our Schmidt picks, and we'll send this one out. So we'll be right back.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for your favorite weekly segment.
Son of a Schmidt.
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 All right, Brandon, so you told me before we went on the air and started talking, and I know this is kind of exciting for you, but you're feeling it tonight. You're pumped up and ready for this show, and I know part of that is because you're ready to go off on your Son of a Schmidt. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you and give you the floor, so let's hear it.
I feel like with me this year, I become a lot more annoyed with, like certain, I guess, factions of our fan base. And so this week I'm going to go with another one. I tweeted something about it like earlier. Like, I feel like Mike and I were kind of at that age group where we're in this weird position because it seems like everyone under the age of like 28 hates everything that Ohio State does. Like, they just are annoyed by everything. Urban Meyer's the worst coach. Every offensive staff person is the worst coach. Every defensive person is the worst coach. Dwayne Haskins sucks. Mike Weber sucks. Everyone sucks. We just hate life. And then you got like the older folks that just like, I want tradition. Scarlet and gray, those are our colors. Like, it's just so like we're kind of stuck in the middle here. We're like, we just want to be Ohio State fans. We just want to have fun. We want to enjoy the games. I enjoy talking about Ohio State. I get to talk about football with my best friend. We get to have like hundreds of people listening to us talk about Ohio State. But like, so this week, of course, the blackout came out, and it kind of amused me this week because, like, one thing if you think about it, like, you've got half of the fan base like, Ohio State versus Michigan State's never going to be a night game because Ohio State would have to sign off on it because it's after November 1st. But then, like, that same half of the fan base is, like, pissed off that the Nebraska game is not a night game because it's, even though it's after November 1st, and Nebraska would have to sign off on it, but it's Ohio State's fault because it's not a night game. Like, y'all just need to get your shit together and stop being so negative with life, you know? Like, you should be having fun being a Buckeye fan. Like, you should enjoy watching the Buckeyes go out there and dominate teams year after year. Like, there's no team that has been better than Ohio State over really these last, like, 18 years consistently. Like, there's been, like, 2004, there's the Luke Fickell year where the Buckeyes struggle. But, like, every other team has had long periods of suckiness. I mean, like, even Bama. Bama never used to be this good. And some of y'all are way too young to remember that. But, like, all the way up to what? Like, 2009, Alabama was kind of a joke there for a good, like, 9-year period. They even lost to, like, an FCS team, like, the year before that. So, this week they come out with their alternate uniforms, which I'm not a uniform person. I know Mike is. Mike's, like, real big into that stuff. But I thought these uniforms were pretty badass. And then you look at those cleats, I thought they were pretty badass. But the biggest outrage, I feel like, even outside of the non-scarlet and gray uniforms, was that the game was a noon game. And, like, everyone's freaking out about it being a blackout. And how are you going to have a blackout at a noon game? I even saw somebody say something about, like, it's going to be too hot for fans. Like, it's not hot in Ohio. Like, shut the hell up. But, like, it's a noon game. It's what it had to be. Like, Nebraska's not going to come play a night game when they have a chance to knock off a reeling team. So, yeah, it's a blackout during noon game. Some of you people, like, it doesn't matter if it was at noon, 3:30, 8 o'clock at night. Like, y'all weren't wearing black anyways just to be the contrarians to the bunch. So, it doesn't matter what time it was. Like, the game's at noon. Who gives a fuck? Like, they're going to be wearing their special uniforms. They got a lot of recruits in town. Like, just go and have fun with the game. Like, you get to watch them. You get to see if Ohio State's made any changes since that Purdue game. You got a lot of talent there. Me personally, like, I'm all for this blackout game. Like, I'm all for Ohio State wearing black this game. Hell, I'm all for Ohio State wearing black for the rest of the year. Like, I almost wish they would have came out this week and just, like, made it a thing. Like, look, we're pissed off at everyone. We're tired of this shit. We went through a lot of crap over the offseason. We have had a rough regular season with people getting hurt. We went and got our asses kicked by some team called Purdue. Like, this is everyone else's funeral. Like, this is not our funeral. This is every team that's coming onto the field with us for the rest of the year's funeral. And we're going to wear black. I want to see Urban Meyer pissed off. I want to see Greg Schiano pissed off. I want to see Ryan Day pissed off. Kevin Wilson pissed off. Like, I want them to all turn into little Nick Sabans, and I want them to just take it Ohio against the world type of mentality and screw everybody. Screw the media, screw the fans, screw everyone. We're coming out there for one purpose, and that's to whoop everybody's asses.
I love it.
Son of a Schmidt.
I love it. Man, you're right. You were ramped up. I love it. Dude, it's crazy. Like, first of all, purely from an aesthetic point, the uniforms this weekend are cool. Like, I don't like everybody that, you know, wears black just for black's sake, you know, trying to match in. But look, Ohio State has black in their uniform, so they make it look cool, man, and it looks good. And you're right, like, the recruits like it, the players like it. I know there's a bunch of people coming in, including the kid from here in Katy that I've been a big fan of since he was a sophomore.
Glass.
Yeah, DeAndre Glass. He's coming for the Nebraska game. Absolutely. I love it. And, you know, just because it's a blackout doesn't mean that you can't play it at noon. Absolutely. How many other times do you see teams do the same thing? So, dude, 100%. I'm right there with you. So,
suck it, old people.
Yeah.
And young people.
Everybody but that 36 to 37-year-old range, right?
Late 30s. That's where it's at.
All right.
And Joe.
And Joe, who's like 19. All right, for my son of a Schmidt this week, this is one I've kind of mentioned on before. I reached my tipping point over the last 2 weeks, and I'm just going to go ahead and put this out there. For those of you that don't know, we run our personal Twitter accounts. We run the Sons of Schmidt Twitter accounts, which, by the way, is at bzimmerman9, at mmeals, and at Sons of Schmidt. We also work on some of the other different accounts, both on Facebook and Twitter for the ORN and some other stuff. So, we constantly are trying to get that max information out there. I've had it up to the top of my computer screen with those of you people that want to come out here and tag players and coaches and send them some of the negative shit that people sends them. Brandon Bowen posted this after the Purdue game, and it's been on my mind since then. Somebody sent him a DM, and it was just pure, just trash, just talking about how shitty he was for not playing and how shitty this team was, and they were just angry. I'm just going to tell you, I'm done. If I see that you're doing it, I'm blocking your ass. I'm going to kick you off every social media that we run, and I could do without you listening to our damn program. I am sick and tired of it. That is ridiculous. These are college kids. Let them play the damn game we love. I've mentioned it before. It's been a long-time theme of ours. We get 15 weeks a year of this shit. Stop being so damn negative and sending this stuff to the players, because that is the last thing they need. This isn't the NFL. These aren't professionals. These are kids that are still going to school. So if I see it, I'm blocking your ass. I'm done. Son of a Schmidt.
That's a good one. Like, you will never see me tagging anyone.
Mm-mm.
I have no problem talking about players. I'll even say it to their face. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to tag someone on Twitter and try to, I'm just not about that life.
Nope, me neither. So on that note, let's take a quick pause. We come back, we'll cover the Schmidt picks because there's a pretty exciting week of college football this weekend. We'll get our final predictions for the Ohio State and Nebraska game, and we'll close this one out and we'll send it on off to Columbus. So we'll take a quick pause.
You are listening to the Sons of Schmidt podcast on the Ozone Radio Network, presented by Hayes and Cannon. The ORN is the online radio home of the Buckeye Sloopcast, the Silver Bullets podcast, Across the Field, and, of course, the Sons of Schmidt, with new episodes broadcast every day of the week. For more information, go to www.theozone.net. And now, back to the show.
All right, Brandino. Last week, neither of us really set the world on fire in our picks. We had the Florida-Georgia game, Penn State, the Stanford-Washington game, the Appy State-Georgia Southern game, and Michigan State-Purdue. In the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, you took Georgia, I took Florida. You got that one right. We both took Penn State. We both got that one right. You took Stanford. I took Wazoo. Wazoo was the winner of that game. We both just threw a dart in the dark at the Appy State-Georgia Southern game. We both got that wrong, taking Appy State. And, of course, we both got the Michigan State over Purdue game correct. That takes your total to 33-15 for the season. I'm at 30-18, so no ground gained. This week, as I mentioned, there are quite a few really good games that'll be worth watching. Quite a few top 25 matchups, and of course this is based off the AP rankings. This isn't based off the college football playoff rankings, so when you hear me say like number 8 Ohio State, obviously that's what I'm referring to. But the first game we got is number 6 Georgia goes to number 11 somehow Kentucky. What do you got in this game?
Georgia is going to whoop that ass.
That's pretty funny because that was my thought also. I've not been high on Kentucky all year. I've watched them play a little bit. I'm just amazed that they squeaked out what they won, but Georgia is so much better for sure.
Yes.
Number 12, West Virginia travels to Austin to take on number 15, Texas. What do you got in this game?
Man, this is a tough one. So I don't know. I was pretty high on Texas going into last weekend, and then Oklahoma State kind of put a whooping on them there for a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. I actually fell asleep when I think it was I feel like it was like 31-14 or something in the second half. I was like, all right, I need to go to sleep. And then I wake up and Texas had like turned it into a game, and like Tom Herman's freaking out and stuff. So like I missed a pretty good second half, I guess. So I don't know, like Big 12 to me is a lot like Pac-12. Like you don't know what you're going to get with a few of the teams week to week. There's some weeks that West Virginia looks really good. There's some weeks that West Virginia looks really bad. Same with Texas. I think Texas being at home, Texas defense looked like absolute shit last week, but I think overall Texas has a pretty good defense. I think being on the road last week kind of hurt that. So I'm going to go Texas this week.
I'm going to take Texas here also, and it's actually funny that you mentioned the defense, because that's where I was going to go. I've been following Tom Herman since he came to Houston. He's had Todd Orlando on his staff down here, and it never fails. There seems to be one game a year where Todd Orlando, who is a great defensive coordinator, just looks absolutely lost. You know, it happened a couple years ago. Their last year at Houston, they lost to Memphis, and Houston was just not in that game. It happened last year for Texas. It happened last week for Texas. But they typically respond pretty well, and the talent level here at Texas is obviously higher in my mind than it is at West Virginia. So I'm taking the Longhorns there too.
Well, and it's funny that you said about Todd Orlando looking lost at least once a year. Ohio State has Billy Davis, who looks lost about 12 times a year. So hopefully he's due also.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get a little change up there, right? Next game is number 14, Penn State goes to Ann Arbor to take on number 5, Michigan. I think this is going to be a good game, but what do you see in this one?
All right, I'm going to go for it. Like, maybe it's just my hate, but I'm going Penn State in this one. I feel like Michigan's got a very good defense. I feel like Trace McSorley can cause some problems. Miles Sanders. I'm not sold on Michigan's offense at all. And I think Tariq Black will probably be back this week, and that'll help quite a bit. I'm going to go with Penn State with the caveat that if Penn State doesn't win, I don't think it's going to be a close game, and I would not be shocked if like Michigan wins by 25 plus points.
So you're either going to take Penn State to win or Michigan by 25. No.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not going to be close if Michigan wins. Once they get rolling. So, but I'm going to go with Penn State.
Okay. Well, I'm taking Michigan. I've said it, the last couple of weeks. Michigan's been playing really good football. Their defense is just probably the best defense in the Big Ten. I know they're ranked high. Nationally they're ranked high, but I really see them being able to game plan shutting down Penn State's offense if they're at home, based on the fact that Ohio State was able to slow them down. And Michigan is better than Ohio State's defense right now. So I'm taking Michigan in that game. I think they're going to easily shut down Penn State.
Yeah, I just, with Trace McSorley being a senior, I just feel like he's got a little bit of mojo that he'll be able to kind of help them pull it out. But in the back of my mind, I feel like this is where you're making up a game.
That could be. Don't worry, I'm probably going to drop it in the next 2 picks here. So the next one is number 1, Alabama, traveling to Death Valley to take on number 4, LSU. This will be LSU's, 4th, 5th, something like that, big, tough challenge game of the season. This will be the first time I think Alabama actually gets challenged, but obviously it's still Alabama. So what do you got happening in Baton Rouge?
This is a tough game, man, because, purely on paper, Alabama should win this game.
Yep.
There's, talent at every position. And I was just talking about this yesterday with some people from work. The thing that worries me with Alabama is they have not been tested yet. Mm-hmm. They have not been challenged. There's been really no competition for them at all. LSU has been through some shit.
Yep.
they have battled some games. They've had a bunch of close games. They're at home. So it makes me want to kind of lean towards LSU here. But I'm still not sold on LSU's offense. I think they've got a very good defense. I think Joe Burrow is very good. I think LSU's wide receivers absolutely blow. I'm going to go with Alabama on this one, but I would not be shocked if LSU pulls this one out.
So let's break this one down, right? Quarterback play, Alabama has the edge. Wide receiver play, Alabama has the edge. Head coach, Alabama has the edge.
Don't let your wife hear that.
Yeah, right? But LSU's playing at home. This is going to be the biggest game LSU's played at home since the last time they played Alabama at home. And LSU, in my mind, is close enough to Alabama that they can stay in the game and let that crowd will them to victory. I'm taking LSU with the upset.
That's a good one. I mean, I'm torn on this one.
So, last one before we get into the only game that matters. Number 16, Utah, travels down and takes on your wife's Spartan Sun Devils Sparky-ishness down there. So
Spartans?
Yeah, they will.
I guess they are called Spartans now since they whooped Michigan State's ass.
Right? So what do you got here? Do the Utes go into Tempe and take one, or does Arizona State, make one of their bounce backs? Because, hey, man, they had a good game last week. Benjamin's their running back?
Benjamin, yeah.
Put up a huge game. So, and we know about N'Keal Harry. I mean, he had another fantastic catch. They knocked off USC, but what do we have happen here? Do they stumble, or do they knock off the Utes also?
I do gotta say, you're kind of an asshole for throwing Arizona State on here every week.
I am bound and determined to use this to catch up field.
Man, gosh, sort of like I was talking about earlier with the West Virginias and the Texas. Arizona State is so frustrating because you never know what you're going to get with them, even from half to half. I mean, you go back to Saturday against USC, who's not a great team but a good team. At home, Arizona State went into Southern California and just put a whooping on USC in that first half. And the second half came out and kind of slept walk. They've got pieces in place. Benjamin has turned into a great back, and the offensive staff there has kind of realized what they have to do with him. He's one of those running backs where you got to feed them a lot of carries to kind of get them going, and they've kind of jumped on that. And Benjamin's ran for 200 plus yards the last couple games. You got N'Keal Harry out there at wide receiver, who is just a beast, man. You see him standing next to other players, and he is just a physical freak. And then you saw that on the punt return where he ran it back for a touchdown. He did something that you're totally not supposed to do. I mean, he ran backwards and along the end zone line to try to get to that picket fence and get around and stuff. And, I mean, Harry's just a damn good ball player. I'm not sold on Manny Wilkins, never have been. I feel like he's the Andy Dalton of the Arizona State Sun Devils, kind of holding them back. So, you know what? I'll give this one to you. I'm going to go with Arizona State. I feel like they're playing some pretty good football right now. And if you really want to feel old, guess who just committed to Arizona State yesterday?
Yeah, I saw that.
Did you see this?
Ocho Cinco's son, right?
Yeah, Chad Johnson's son committed to Arizona State. So,
yeah.
I mean, Herm Edwards is doing some good things. I am going to go with Arizona State.
I know it's funny. You mentioned this earlier this year, and I laughed because, you said that I typically want to take the higher-ranked team, and it has nothing to do with the fact that Utah is ranked 16th because, as we talked about last week, Arizona State still legitimately has a chance to win their division. But I've also listened to you enough that this year that Arizona State they'll be really good in the game, and then the next week they completely fall off the map. They lost to San Diego State earlier this year, And they went out, they beat down on USC, and I think they're going to lose this week. So I'm taking Utah. So,
speaking of teams losing to really crappy teams, can we take a moment here just to laugh at Colorado for blowing a 31-3 lead against Oregon frickin' State?
Congratulations, Beavers. We did not think you were going to win a single conference game all year. So, yeah.
Colorado fans thought they were a good team.
Yeah. All right, man. So the only game that matters, we've talked about it. Nebraska goes to number 8, Ohio State. Game's going to be a noon kick, as we've talked about. It's going to be a blackout, which we've talked about. It's going to be a big recruiting weekend, as we've talked about. It's going to be a chance to show the changes that Ohio State needed to make, as we've talked about. Talent-wise, coaching-wise, this should be a no-brainer. It should be Ohio State. I assume you're taking the Buckeyes because you mentioned that earlier this game, but give me your prediction and give me your final score.
This game to me, I know you're a big HG TV guy. I know Michael Citro is, and me. Like, you know those shows where like they are like flipping the homes, and like you buy a home that you don't know what is on the other side. I feel like that's how the Buckeyes are for us this year is this week. Yeah. This week, like we don't know what changes that they're gonna make. Like, you know, on the outside it looks good. They got 4 and 5 stars everywhere. You know, Tough Borland saying things, Isaiah Prince is saying things, Jordan Fuller's saying things that make us, you know, excited about it. It looks like, you know, they've got the pool in the backyard, the front exterior looks good. But we don't know what the inside looks like until we actually buy it. So we get to buy Ohio State on Saturday at noon to see what changes they make. So we think it's going to be good. We think they're saying all the right things. We think they're going to turn this whole team around, but we just don't know. So in my head, they fixed the running game. In my head, the linebackers are not playing on the line of scrimmage. In my head, Isaiah Pryor is not the starting safety. I still think Nebraska is going to put up points. I am going to go with 48-20 as my final score.
All right. Well, it's that makes me feel a little bit better because we're in the same ballpark here. Yeah, it's definitely a case where they need to get the contractor in and take a look at the foundation, the roof, the heating, you know, that sort of thing. Because from the street, it looks all right. It needs a little bit of landscaping work and everything done. You're right. You know, you got that one. That's a good analogy. No, we've been talking about it for 2 weeks. We've been posting about it on Twitter. We've been talking about it on the show. We've been talking about it everywhere that anyone would listen. There's obviously a lot of things Ohio State needs to fix. I have the confidence that they will at least fix some of them because just looking historically, Urban Meyer seems to respond from losses very well, especially when he gets kicked in the mouth and they come out and they make the changes they need to, and that's what usually is the catalyst to get him to do things. So I think Ohio State will make some of the changes. I have this game ending 42-21 in favor of the good guys. So that's what I'm going to see is what goes down here. So with the predictions in and everything's all through, recap, you got Georgia, Texas. We split on the Penn State-Michigan game. We split on Alabama-LSU. We split on Utah-Arizona State. We both took the Buckeyes. 48-20 for you, 42-21 for me. Any last tidbits that you want to get out here on tape or anything you want to mention before we go?
I will just bring up, just, you know, like we kind of talked about it before. I think we were in a text conversation with some friends about it, but, you know, like the College Football Playoff Committee kind of leans towards the SEC, the ACC, those type of things. Joel Klatt had a really good tweet tonight. Quick trend I would like to point out to you. Top-ranked undefeated team, SEC. Top-ranked one-loss team, SEC. Top-ranked two-loss team, SEC. Top-ranked three-loss team,
Wait.
SEC.
I was going to say, I bet I know that one.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, just don't take this shit seriously right now. You know where their agenda is. It's been that way for a few years now, so Don't get upset about it.
Yeah, it's just like the preseason polls. It's still real early. So, all right, man. Well, I don't have anything else to add. The only thing I'd put out there is I've mentioned it before, at @BZimmerman9, @MMeals, @Sons of Schmidt. Give us a follow on Twitter. Find us on Facebook, the Sons of Schmidt. Email the show, sonsofschmidt@gmail.com. Follow the rest of the shows on the Ozone Radio Network. You got the Sloopcast, you got the Silver Bullets podcast, and then you have Tony and Tom's Across the Field. So definitely worth checking out. We put new stuff out every week or every day of the week. And now that we're coming out of the bye week, you'll start seeing some of the weekly articles and stuff going up on Hayes and Cannon. You know, the stuff that like Chip and myself and Adam always puts out. Brandon, do you got anything coming down the pipeline this week?
No, I mean, I kind of just go where I see stuff.
Okay.
We will see what pops up.
There we go. All right, man. Well, if that's it, then let's go ahead and tie this one off, man. So go Bucks. OH.
I-O.
Buckeye Nation, make sure you're getting the latest news and episodes from the Sons of Schmidt podcast. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Sons of Schmidt. You can follow us on Twitter @Sons of Schmidt, or email the show, sonsofschmidt@gmail.com. And look for us on Hayes and Cannon at theozone.net.